Hey guys, tonight we're stepping straight into the creaking shoes of an ordinary person growing old in the Middle Ages. A world where every wrinkle on your skin tells a story, and each story is a little more brutal than the last. As you shuffle through torchlit streets, wrapped in a cloak that never seems thick enough, the chill in your bones isn't just from the damp night air. It's the realization that in this world, growing old is a kind of curse, one that few survive, and even fewer survive with dignity. You probably won't survive this journey, but don't worry. Tonight your only task is to listen, and maybe sigh in relief that you were born centuries later. So before we go any further, if this quiet space makes you feel even a little less alone, you can like the video and subscribe, but only if it feels right to your heart. And hey, I'd love to know where you're listening from. Are you lying awake in a quiet room at 2 a.m? Or maybe starting your day in a rainy city, eyes still heavy? Drop your time and place in the comments. Let's remind each other we're not alone out here. Now dim the lights, let your shoulders relax, and let's begin tonight's slow, strange journey together, here on Timeless Sleep. You step into the reflection of a tarnished metal mirror, a luxury most can't afford, but even the richest noble can't escape the creeping, sagging lines carved by time. Your skin, once smooth and flushed with youth, now maps your life. Sunspots from years in the fields, wrinkles etched deep by endless worry, and scars from accidents or long-forgotten illnesses. There's no gentle serum to dab on your crow's feet. Instead, women and men alike search for folk cures, smearing lard and honey on their cheeks or dusting their faces with chalk to cover blemishes. You might hear a travelling seller hawking a miracle tonic, promising to erase 10 years in a single sip. If you're feeling especially daring or desperate, you might try the new fashion of egg white masks, stiffening your face until it cracks. Historians still argue whether these recipes did more harm than good. What's certain is that the smell lingered, and not in a pleasant way. Unlike today, there's little affection for the signs of age. Your wrinkles aren't seen as badges of wisdom. They're warnings, reminders that you're closer to the grave than the cradle. Young people might stare or giggle, making jokes about crone's curses or old men turning into toads. Mothers warn their children not to stare at the witch's lines on your brow. A few people, perhaps kinder or simply more superstitious, will cross themselves as you pass, just in case you carry a curse along with your stooped shoulders. The world is deeply unkind to the elderly. If you are a woman, things can be especially brutal. After a certain age, the soft welcome of girlhood vanishes, replaced by suspicion. Grey hair and wrinkled skin mark you as someone to be avoided, or worse, someone to be accused. Just ask the many women who found themselves at the wrong end of a village rumour, accused of souring milk or blighting crops. One neighbour's toothless smile becomes another's proof of devilry. You tug your hood lower, hoping to avoid notice, but everyone knows that once you're past childbearing age, you're seen as neither useful nor desirable in the eyes of most. A fringe belief persists in some corners, that the lines on your face can predict the future. A few herbalists claim to read wrinkles, tracing them with a bony finger to foretell love, death, or disaster. The church frowns on these practices, and you might find yourself at confession, muttering apologies for dabbling in superstition. Historians still debate how widespread these customs really were. Maybe just rural nonsense, maybe a real comfort in a world with so little certainty. But the truth is, life wears you down fast. Most people don't even reach old age. If you're over 40, you're already considered ancient by some. Your joints ache, your back is a question mark, and every step feels like a negotiation with your own body. The idea of retirement doesn't exist. Instead, you work until you can't, then hope someone remembers to bring you a bowl of soup. If you live in the country, you might rely on family, but only if they have enough food for everyone. In town, the best you can hope for is a parish charity. Otherwise, you join the faceless poor, sitting on a church step, hand outstretched, wrapped in the cloak of your own exhaustion. Every day, the mirror tells you what the world won't say aloud. You are becoming invisible. When you were younger, you might have danced at midsummer festivals or laughed at harvest feasts, your face glowing in the firelight. Now you sit in the corner, ignored unless someone needs your memory to solve a dispute. Even then, your version of the story is treated with skepticism. Old people, after all, are known for their confusion. You might hear, "Don't mind her, she's losing her wits," even when you remember more than the whole town combined. It's not just the skin on your face that sags. Your sense of safety slips away too. You worry about thieves, cruel boys with stones, even the odd rat nibbling at your toes as you sleep. At night, your dreams are filled with the faces of those you've lost. Siblings, friends, spouses, even children. The world grows smaller with every year, each new ache a sign that you're next. Yet, you cling to tiny comforts. A sprig of rosemary tucked under your pillow for memory, a wooden comb, worn smooth with decades of use, pulled through what hair remains. Maybe you whisper a prayer, asking for relief. Or you tell yourself a joke, the kind only the elderly seem to remember, about the time the village priest fell in the well, or the time a pig wandered into the Lord's feast. The punchline never lands quite right, but laughter is a balm, even when it rattles in your empty kitchen. If you're lucky, you might have a granddaughter who sits at your feet, wide-eyed, asking for stories. You trace the lines on your face and tell her that each wrinkle is a road you've travelled. A storm survived, a child born, a winter endured. She believes you, and for a moment you almost believe it too. But as soon as she runs off to play, you're left with silence again. There are always new fads, new promises of eternal youth. Some nobles import exotic powders from Venice or Egypt. Ground pearls, deadly mercury, even crocodile dung, rumoured to keep the skin supple. You might be tempted just for a moment, but then you remember old Anna, who smeared herself with a Venetian paste and woke up blind in one eye. Historians still argue whether these deadly beauty regimens were reserved for the rich, or if village wise women also dabbled. What's certain is that most attempts to hold back time backfired spectacularly. You hear church bells toll the hour, another day gone. You watch your neighbours, some as wrinkled as you, some not long for this world. You wonder if tomorrow will be your turn, if you'll be the story they tell, the warning whispered to the young, stay out of the sun or you'll end up like her. Sometimes you catch your reflection and try to smile just to see if the lines shift. They don't, but you smile anyway. Jokes about age abound, some sharper than others. You might hear a neighbour mutter, "If I live to be as old as you, just toss me in the river." Or, as you trudge to market, a child might call after you, "Move faster, Granny, before the devil catches up." You learn to laugh it off. What else can you do? Laughter is the only medicine that doesn't run out. Still, there are moments of quiet rebellion. At the spring festival, you pull your hood back, letting everyone see your age. You join the circle dance, your feet stumbling but your spirit fierce. For a heartbeat, you are young again, remembered not for your wrinkles but for your courage. The next day, your knees ache and your back is on fire, but the memory keeps you warm. The nights are longest in winter. You sit by the hearth, if you have one, or huddle with others in the dark, telling stories to chase away the fear. Sometimes you remember your own mother's face, crinkled and gentle, her hands always busy. You realise you are her now, the ghost in the corner, the one who remembers everything and nothing. No matter how hard you try, you can't erase the years. There's no magic, no secret. You grow older, you endure. Maybe you even learn to love the map your life has drawn on your skin. Or maybe you just wait, hoping for a better world on the other side of sleep. But tonight, here on Timeless Sleep, you're safe. You can set aside the sting of the past and the ache of your bones. Let the lines on your face soften in the gentle darkness. Let the stories settle like dust on the windowsill. Tomorrow, you'll wake up young again. Or at least you'll wake up in a world that doesn't punish you for growing old. You wake with the ache already pulsing in your jaw. A familiar, miserable friend. For a moment, you try not to move your tongue, not to poke at the hollow where a tooth used to be. But it's impossible to resist. You prod the gap, tongue against tender gum, and wince. Another tooth gone in the night, surrendered without ceremony. You know, as everyone knows, that losing teeth is just part of growing old in this world. Still, the humiliation stings almost as much as the pain. If you're lucky, you might have a few teeth left. Yellowed, perhaps, crooked or blackened at the roots, but still good for mashing coarse bread and salted fish. If you're unlucky, your mouth is already more empty than full. You wonder how long you can keep eating the tough rye crusts before you have to start soaking them in broth, like the oldest men and women at the parish poorhouse. Dental care, as you know it, simply doesn't exist. There are no dentists, no clean, sharp tools in sterile rooms. The best you can hope for is a neighbour with a strong grip and a dull knife, or a travelling barber surgeon who sets up in the village square, flanked by buckets of dirty water and blood-stained rags. When your tooth begins to rot, pulsing with an ache that wakes you at midnight, you know it's time for action. Waiting only brings more agony, or worse, an abscess that swells your cheek and threatens to kill you. You might pray to Saint Apollonia, the patroness of toothaches, before seeking help. Historians still argue whether her protection brought any comfort, or if her name was just one more thing to mutter as you braced for pain. The ritual is the same whether you're rich or poor. Someone, a relative, a friend, or the grinning barber, wraps a bit of linen around your head and holds you still. The tool varies: a pair of iron pincers if you're lucky, a sharpened stick if you're not. There's no anaesthetic, no numbing agent, no gentle words. You bite down, try not to scream, and pray that the tooth comes out clean. It rarely does. More often, part of it breaks off, and you're left to spit bloody fragments for days. You hear stories, everyone does, about the merchant's wife in the next village who tried a new tooth remedy, rinsing her mouth with vinegar and salt. For a few nights she claimed it worked, but then the pain returned, sharper than before. There's always someone selling a miracle cure. You might hear about a paste made from mint and sage, or a potion brewed from wine, pepper and ground coral. Sometimes these concoctions numb the pain for a while, but they never fix the rot beneath. And sometimes the so-called remedy is worse than the problem. One man in your town lost his entire lower jaw after a failed treatment with burning hot pitch. Whether this story is fact or cautionary fiction, historians still debate, but everyone agrees that hope can be deadly in the wrong hands. Quirky household remedies pass from grandmother to mother to daughter. Chew on fennel, gnaw a clove, rub your gums with honey or garlic. On feast days, some folks even press pieces of bread against their sore teeth, praying as they do. These small rituals might soothe for a moment, but they do nothing to stop the decay. Every year, more teeth loosen, each one a quiet warning that time is running out. Losing your teeth isn't just painful, it's embarrassing. You try not to laugh too hard at the market, worried someone will notice your gaps. When you do laugh, you cover your mouth, just like the old women who cluster in the churchyard after Mass. Young people tease, calling you old gap tooth or gummy. Sometimes you join the joke. After all, what else is there to do? But the laughter is brittle, tinged with resentment. If you're a noble or a merchant, you might have the money for a rare and gruesome luxury, a set of false teeth, carved from bone or ivory. They fit poorly, scraping your gums and making it even harder to chew. But at least you look a little less pitiful at banquets, able to mumble through your pottage without drawing too many stares. Of course, these false teeth are mostly for show. If you actually try to eat with them, they fall out into your cup of wine, which becomes the punchline of many whispered jokes. There's a rumour in town that the Lord Steward once swallowed his tooth plate at the Yule feast, and nearly choked to death. Historians still debate if anyone really died from such a mishap, or if the story just reflects everyone's private fear. Meanwhile, the lucky few who keep most of their teeth into old age become something of a legend. People ask, "What's your secret?" as if there's a trick beyond strong genetics and a little luck. Some say it's from chewing birch twigs every morning. Others credit drinking nothing but ale, which is at least safer than the water most of the time. You might even hear that eating onions every day keeps your teeth firm, a claim that seems dubious, but in a world with so few answers, any answer will do. You get used to eating differently. Hard cheese and bread are tough on the gums, but you soak them in ale or broth until they're soft. Stews are a blessing, meat is rare, but when you get it, you gnaw it carefully, tearing small shreds. You envy the children with their strong jaws and the younger adults who bite into apples without a second thought. Sometimes you dream of having just one more set of healthy teeth, the way you did in your youth, but you know it's impossible. Each lost tooth is a milestone, a marker that your body's giving up one piece at a time. Bad breath is another curse of old age. You do your best, chewing parsley or mint when you can get it, but nothing really helps. When you speak, you keep your head down, embarrassed by the sour scent. At gatherings, you notice people turning away as you talk or covering their noses when you lean in. It's a small thing, but it stings. Sometimes you wonder if people are more afraid of your breath than your wisdom. Toothaches aren't just a minor inconvenience, they can be deadly. If an abscess bursts inward, infection can flood your body, and there's no saving you. The wise women know the signs: swollen jaw, fever, delirium, and sometimes they try poultices, wrapping your face in warm cloth steeped in herbs. You lie still and pray, hoping the swelling goes down. Sometimes it does. Sometimes you die, your passing explained away as old age or God's will. Whether more people died from dental infections than from outright hunger, historians still argue, but everyone agrees. The pain of growing old starts with your mouth and spreads to everything else. Children are taught to fear the sight of a toothless elder. In stories, witches always have missing teeth. The bogeyman grins with blackened gums. You try not to take it personally, but sometimes, alone at night, you wonder if you've become someone's cautionary tale. If you're feeling brave or foolish, you might try to pull a loose tooth yourself. You tie a string around it, brace yourself, and yank. Sometimes it works, but just as often, it makes things worse. Blood pours down your chin, and for days you can barely eat. You regret your impatience, but desperation drives you to try anything for relief. Barber surgeons, the closest thing to dentists in your world, are notorious for their lack of delicacy. Their shops smell of blood and spirits, their hands stained and quick. Some use pliers heated over a flame, hoping the burn will keep away bad humours. Others recommend washing your mouth with strong wine after an extraction, if you're rich enough to have wine, that is. There's a kind of gallows humour about it. If the pain doesn't kill you, the cure will. Even the barber surgeons themselves make jokes telling you that every pulled tooth brings you closer to heaven. It's funny until it happens to you. Despite all the misery, you try to keep a sense of humour. When you do lose a tooth, you toss it into the fire and make a wish. A small, private superstition. Some say it brings good luck, or that it will keep evil spirits away. Others claim it's just a way to hide the evidence of your decline. Historians still argue about the origins of these rituals, but the comfort is real enough. Social life changes too. You avoid gatherings where you'll be expected to eat, or you sit at the edge of the feast pretending you're not hungry. The shame of being seen as helpless, as weak, is worse than the pain. You remember the days when you could crack walnuts with your teeth or chew through tough mutton without a second thought? Those days are gone. As you drift off to sleep, the ache in your jaw a constant companion, you wish for something, anything, that could make the pain stop. But you know there's nothing. You endure because that's what you've always done. Tomorrow you'll wake and find another tooth gone. Another reminder that growing old in the Middle Ages isn't just hard, it's relentless. Yet even in all this misery you find moments of comfort. A grandchild presses a kiss to your cheek, unbothered by your missing teeth. A neighbour shares a bowl of warm pottage, already soft for your aching gums. You laugh at a memory and for a moment you don't care who sees the gaps in your smile. Life goes on, tooth by tooth, pain by pain, joke by joke. The sun rises, and you carry on, proving, just by surviving, that you're tougher than anyone could guess. You blink at the morning light and realise once again how blurry the world has become. The faces around you are softer, smudged at the edges, features blending into shadows. Shapes dance at the corners of your eyes, and when you reach for your wooden cup on the table, you knock it over instead. You mutter a curse, half embarrassed, half resigned. The slow fading of your eyesight is just another indignity of growing old, one that no prayer or potion can fix. There's a certain terror in losing your vision here, in a world where so much depends on sharp eyes. You remember your youth, chasing chickens through muddy yards, threading a needle by candlelight, reading the faintest script on a page if you were lucky enough to learn your letters. Now every task feels treacherous. If you're a craftsman, your livelihood slips away as your eyes betray you. If you're a woman, weaving and mending become guesswork and you prick your finger more often than the cloth. There are no glasses to fetch, no optometrists to visit. In your world, poor vision is a life sentence, and the best you can do is adapt. Some people squint, others hold things close to their faces, and the rest simply accept that the world will blur until it finally goes dark. Some blame the bad air, or evil spirits, or simply say that God clouds the eyes of the old for reasons known only to him. Historians still argue whether medieval people understood anything about cataracts or glaucoma, but one thing is clear. If your sight fades, you fade with it, slipping out of the centre of things and into the edges. Superstitions swirl around failing eyesight. Some say it's a punishment for seeing something you shouldn't have in your youth. A fairy, a secret sin, a forbidden love. There's a story of an old miller who lost his vision after peeking at a witch's midnight dance. Whether anyone believes these tales or just repeats them for comfort, no one is sure. But when your own eyes begin to betray you, it's hard not to wonder if you're being punished for something long forgotten. Household remedies abound. You might try rinsing your eyes with cold water from a running stream, or pressing slices of cucumber, when you can get them, to your eyelids. Some swear by a mixture of rosewater and honey, dropped carefully into the eyes with a feather. Others brew strong teas from eyebright or fennel, straining the liquid through linen before daring to use it. Once, you even heard of a woman who let a black cat sleep on her face at night, convinced the animal's vision would transfer to her by morning. Whether these treatments did any good, or simply made you smell odd and sticky, is still debated by scholars, but hope is always the strongest medicine. You quickly learn to navigate your world by sound, touch, and memory. You count the steps from bed to hearth, learn to recognize family by the cadence of their footsteps or the pitch of their laughter. You listen for the soft clink of the bread knife, the hiss of water on the fire, the distant rumble of a cart on cobbles. Everything becomes a kind of music, and you begin to rely on it more than your unreliable eyes. Sometimes, losing your sight means losing your place in the household. The younger ones hurry past you, too busy to slow down for your careful steps. You sit by the window, pretending to watch the world, even though all you see are shifting blurs. When someone asks for help, tying a knot, finding a dropped coin, you apologize, wishing you could still do these simple things. Frustration builds, and you feel yourself shrinking, becoming smaller in your own life. Meals become more challenging too. You spill more than you eat. Broth dribbles down your chin and crumbs gather in your lap. At feasts you rely on others to pass you the right dish, and you trust that what you're given is safe to eat. Sometimes crueler relatives or neighbours swap your bowl for an empty one, just to watch you fumble. You laugh it off, but the sting lingers. If you can read, your books become closed worlds. Letters blur and fade, and you have to squint so hard your head aches. You ask children or grandchildren to read to you if they can, and listen to stories you once knew by heart. In these moments, you are grateful for the oral traditions, for the way tales pass from mouth to ear, unchanged even as your eyes grow dim. Vision loss is dangerous in other ways too. The world is full of hazards, open hearths, uneven stairs, sharp tools left where you least expect them. Every day is a test of your memory and your caution. Sometimes you trip and fall, and the pain radiates through your old bones for weeks. Bruises bloom on your arms and legs, silent reminders that even your own home is a battlefield. For those with a little wealth, there's the possibility of help. A servant or a kind relative might lead you from room to room, help you dress, cut your meat at the table. But most are not so lucky. You rely on charity, on the goodwill of neighbours, or you simply go without. In some households, old people are quietly pushed aside, left to fend for themselves in a back room or cold corner. Oddly, some claim there is a silver lining. With poor sight, you see fewer of the world's cruelties. You notice less of the dirt, the decay, the suspicious glances thrown your way. You find comfort in the shadows where the world is softened and less threatening, but this too is a bitter sort of consolation. You hold close the memory of seeing well. Sunlight glittering on a stream, the intricate stitches in a piece of embroidery, the faces of loved ones clearly smiling at you. On holy days, you struggle to see the altar or the icons, wishing you could make out the details. You rely on memory to fill in the blanks, piecing together the world from fragments. Historians still argue about just how common severe vision loss was in medieval times. Some suggest poor diets and long hours by candlelight made it inevitable for nearly everyone past a certain age. Others say only a fraction lost their sight completely, while most simply muddled through with blurring vision and frequent headaches. Whatever the case, you know that growing old means watching the world slip away, little by little, until all that's left is a tapestry of sound, scent, and touch. Jokes about eyesight are as common as jokes about missing teeth. You see less now, but maybe that's a mercy, someone teases as you miss a step. Or, old Tom can't spot a crow in a cabbage patch, but he sure knows when supper's ready. You join in the laughter because it's better than crying, and because there's a small comfort in being seen, even if only as the butt of a joke. Sometimes late at night you dream of having your sight again. You wake, for a moment convinced you can see as you once did. You blink into the darkness, searching for familiar shapes, but all is shadow. You sigh, wrap your shawl tighter, and remind yourself that the mind remembers what the eyes have lost. If you're particularly unlucky, your vision goes entirely, and you become what people call a blind beggar. Children are taught to fear and pity you in equal measure. Some toss you a coin for luck, others avoid your touch, convinced you carry a curse. There are tales of blind prophets and wise women who see things no one else can, but most people would rather avoid the risk. Despite all this, there are moments of tenderness. A grandchild places a flower in your hand, guiding your fingers to feel the soft petals. A neighbour helps you cross the muddy road, steadying your trembling arm. At the feast of St. Lucy, the patron saint of the blind, someone lights a candle for you, whispering prayers for your failing eyes. For a moment, you feel seen in a different way. Not as a burden, but as someone worthy of care. You keep going, day by blurry day. You adjust to the dimming world, holding tight to memory, to sound, to touch. The world narrows, but your spirit persists, stubborn and quietly fierce. Even as your eyes betray you, you find new ways to navigate the old paths. In the darkness, you learn to trust yourself, and maybe even to forgive your failing body, just a little. Your first step out of bed sends a familiar jolt up your leg, a sharp ache, the unwelcome greeting of your aging bones. You try to stand tall, but your spine protests, curving you forward, making each movement a negotiation. The fire in your joints never quite cools, even when you press a warm brick to your knees at night. For you and every elder in your world, bone pain and the threat of sudden injury are facts of life, woven into every day like the smoke in your cottage rafters. It starts gradually, a little stiffness here and there, ignored as long as possible, but soon the aches grow sharper, the stiffness less willing to loosen. On cold mornings, your fingers barely unclench, and your hips grind painfully as you shuffle to the fire. Sometimes you joke that your bones are made of bread crusts and old clay, but the laughter is short-lived, replaced by a low groan as you lower yourself to a stool. Falls are dangerous at any age, but in old age they're disasters. One slip on a slick stone step or icy cobble, and you're left sprawled, breathless, waiting for someone to help. The shock of the fall is bad enough, but the real trouble comes afterward, swelling, bruising, and pain that won't fade. If you're lucky, the bone is only bruised. If not, you know what's next. A break, a fracture, a season or more of agony. In medieval towns and villages, broken bones are a terrifying prospect, because the cures are often as harrowing as the injury. The local barber surgeon is summoned, his arrival always a mixed blessing. He's seen more gore than you'd care to imagine, and his hands are quick, but not always gentle. There's little understanding of anatomy, no x-rays, no knowledge of how bones knit. Sometimes the bone is yanked into place with a swift, brutal pull. A friend or family member might hold you down, their eyes averted as you howl. The surgeon wraps the limb with splints, maybe carved from willow branches or whatever straight sticks can be found, then binds everything with linen and hopes for the best. Sometimes these makeshift splints do their job, and the bone slowly mends, though it almost always heals crooked. Your arm or leg sets at an angle, a permanent reminder of the accident. People say, better bent than dead, and you try to agree. Yet every change in the weather makes the breakache anew, a stubborn, deep pain you can't outrun. You become a living barometer, your joints predicting rain better than the village priest. Not everyone is lucky. Some breaks are too severe. A shattered hip or compound fracture can mean months of agony, bedridden and dependent on others for every need. There are tales of folks whose bones festered after a break. Skin hot and red, fever burning in the veins. The wise women try poultices, laying cool herbs on swollen flesh, but there's little they can do. Infection can set in, and once it does, you know the end is near. Sometimes the only option is to amputate, a word that sends shivers through any room. Amputation is its own horror. Done with saws and no anaesthetic, survival not guaranteed. Historians still argue whether more people died from the injury or the cure itself, but every old-timer has a story of someone lost to bone rot. For chronic pain, arthritis, rheumatism, all the unnamed aches that blossom in old joints, there are few real solutions. You try everything, soaking hands in warm water, wrapping knees in wool, rubbing in lard or mustard seed. The wise women brew infusions of willow bark, believed to ease pain, or recommend you sleep with a bag of hot stones pressed to your back. Some villagers believe in charms, tying bits of red thread around swollen joints, whispering prayers against the evil wind. Maybe you see a little improvement, maybe not. Most days the pain is just something you live with, a background hum growing louder with every year. Daily life becomes a gauntlet. Even simple tasks are daunting. Carrying a bucket of water threatens to twist your wrist. Chopping wood is out of the question. Stairs, once easy, now require a slow two-handed crawl. You plan your day around your limitations, calculating which chores are worth the pain. When the pain is at its worst, you find excuses to sit by the hearth, pretending to mend something or sort beans, anything to look useful and avoid pity. You notice the world's impatience with your slowness. At the market, people jostle past, annoyed at your careful steps. Children giggle and dart around you, sometimes mocking your stiff walk. You remember a time when your own feet were quick and sure, but now you must accept the new rhythm of your days. You move like a willow in the wind, bending, creaking, always threatening to snap. Broken bones are more than just a physical trial, they're social too. If you're bedridden after a fall, you rely on family or neighbours to bring food, change your linens, help you bathe. In wealthier households there might be a servant or hired nurse, but most people have only the grudging help of a busy daughter-in-law or a tired spouse. You worry about being a burden, and sometimes you overhear whispered complaints. The fear of being left alone with your pain gnaws at you more than the pain itself. Your peers share advice, some useful, some just desperate hope. Wrap your knees in nettles, one friend suggests. It draws out the pain. Another recommends eating pickled herring every morning, claiming it keeps the bones strong. There's always a new remedy, always a tale of someone who tried something strange and found relief, at least for a while. Historians still debate whether these home cures worked, or if belief was more powerful than the herbs themselves. Despite all this, you do your best to stay active, clinging to independence. You join in when you can, sweeping the yard, helping in the kitchen, tending the garden on sunny days. Each effort is a small rebellion against the prison of your own body. You refuse to disappear, to let pain define your days. If you're lucky, there's laughter too. A joke about your weather knee, or a story about the time you tried to dance at the midsummer fair and nearly toppled into the maypole. You make light of it, because what else can you do? If you don't laugh, you'll only weep. Sometimes when the pain is especially sharp, you wonder about the future. Will you become one of those old folks who never leaves their bed? Will your world shrink to a single room, a single chair by the fire? You try not to dwell on it, focusing instead on the things you can still do, the pleasures you can still find, the taste of fresh bread, the feel of sunlight on your face, the sound of your grandchildren's laughter. If you're particularly unlucky, you might be sent to a hospital, a word that sounds comforting until you arrive. Medieval hospitals are little more than large, crowded dormitories run by monks or nuns. Cleanliness is a dream, privacy unheard of. The care is basic, a bowl of gruel, a rough wool blanket and prayers. The monks do their best, but there's little they can offer beyond spiritual comfort and the occasional herbal salve. The stories you hear about bones set wrong, about patients who never left, make you shiver. Despite all the misery, there are moments of grace. Sometimes a neighbour brings a pot of soup or sits with you, sharing news and gossip. A child offers a flower, or a cat curls at your feet, its warmth a quiet balm. In these moments you remember you're still alive, still capable of small joys. You cling to these moments, letting them carry you through the hardest days. Historians still argue about whether medieval people accepted pain more readily than we do now, or if they simply had no choice. Maybe it's both. You learn to live with pain, to bend around it, to find purpose where you can. And through it all, you carry on, one slow, careful step at a time. Your mind was once as sharp as a falcon's eye, picking out every detail, every slight, every bit of laughter around a crowded table. You remember the days when you could recall the names of every family in your village, every trade, every secret. Now, memories slip through your fingers like grains of sand. Words vanish mid-sentence, and you find yourself searching for the name of a neighbour you've known your entire life. There is a hollowing fear in this, that your mind might become just as brittle as your bones, betraying you to confusion and silence in your final years. In the Middle Ages, there is no understanding of what you would call dementia today. No one whispers Alzheimer's or speaks of plaques and tangles. The language of the mind is blurred, mixed up with fears, folk stories, and the cold, controlling hand of the church. When you forget your words, your way, or your loved ones' names, people don't talk of brain chemistry. They talk of curses, of melancholy humours, of the devil's breath creeping into old skulls. Historians still argue whether villagers truly believed that mental decline was a curse, or if it was simply a way to explain the inexplicable in a world overflowing with mysteries and fears. If you're a woman, the danger's double. Old women who forget too much, or who mutter to themselves, or who seem odd in their ways, risk more than embarrassment. You risk being labelled a witch, an agent of chaos, someone who can blight fields and wither crops with a single confused gaze. The edges of the village are filled with whispers. She's touched by the fairies. She's lost her wits. She brings bad luck. There's a story of a widow who, in her dotage, wandered the streets at night, searching for a child she'd lost decades before. People began leaving offerings of bread at her door, half out of pity, half out of fear. No one wanted to be the one she cursed in her confusion. Whether these stories reflect real dangers or just the anxiety of rural life, historians continue to debate. But the fear is real enough in the daily life of the old. In your youth, you probably laughed at the strange habits of the elders. Maybe you made jokes with friends about the neighbour who hid spoons in the rafters, or the old man who sometimes called his wife by his childhood dog's name. It's easy to joke until it's your own mind slipping away. Now you stand in the doorway staring at the fading light, wondering if you've locked the chickens up for the night or if you just imagined it. You retrace your steps, finding yourself in rooms you didn't mean to enter, doing things you don't remember starting. You become your own ghost, haunting the home you built. The family watches you. Sometimes their concern is gentle, a daughter guiding you to your seat, a grandson repeating a story 3 times without complaint. Other times, impatience flickers in their eyes. "You've told me that already, grandfather." Or more sharply, "Why can't you remember anything?" These small stings accumulate, and you begin to hold your tongue. Better silent than mocked. Better invisible than a burden. Some days are good, clear, sharp, your mind nimble and stories flowing like spring water. On those days you teach the young ones songs, tell tales of distant lands or battles or harvest feasts long past. Your laughter rings out, and for a moment you are yourself again, entire and bright. But then come the bad days, when faces blur and words tangle, when you are lost in your own cottage or frightened by your own reflection in a darkened window. There's a special kind of loneliness in knowing you are fading, knowing others notice, and feeling powerless to stop it. Quirky remedies for mental confusion fill the world around you. Some recommend wearing a sprig of rosemary behind your ear, for remembrance, as the saying goes. Others counsel avoiding cold water or eating more walnuts, which supposedly look like brains and must therefore strengthen the mind. There's a tale of a priest who cured his failing memory by reciting the Psalms backwards every morning. You tried it once but got lost somewhere in Psalm 23 and decided God would forgive the lapse. Historians still debate whether these folk practices helped, but belief in them runs strong. Superstition always creeps in. When you misplace an object, you suspect fairies, not forgetfulness. When you forget your way, you whisper a charm to St. Dymphna, patroness of the mad. You pray at her shrine if you're lucky enough to live near one, or clutch a scrap of her relic if your church owns such a thing. Sometimes you simply pray for mercy, hoping your mind will return with the morning sun. The people around you sometimes treat you with fear, other times with gentle indulgence. Children are warned not to play tricks on you. You might call down a bad wind or see things that aren't there. You learn to guard your words, to keep your odd thoughts to yourself. You worry that one day your mind will slip so far you won't remember your own name. The worst fear is not just losing your memories, but losing yourself, becoming someone unrecognizable, someone strangers pity or fear. Nighttime brings a different kind of dread. In the darkness, memories become dreams, and dreams become confusion. You wake up in the small hours, unsure where you are, convinced you're back in your childhood home or waiting for your mother to call you to supper. Sometimes you wander, opening doors, peering into shadowy corners. Family members guide you gently back to bed, soothing you like a child. You resent this at first, then cling to the comfort of a warm hand, a familiar voice. You see yourself reflected in the eyes of your neighbours. Some are patient, understanding that old age is a country everyone enters if they live long enough. Others are less kind, making jokes behind your back or whispering about madness and the devil's work. You hear rumours of families sending confused elders to monasteries, hoping the monks can pray the confusion away. The monks do what they can, chanting, bathing, feeding, comforting, but there are no real cures, only waiting and the slow passage of time. On market days, you hear stories of famous madmen and madwomen in distant cities. Some became saints, their visions interpreted as divine. Others became outcasts, wandering from town to town, surviving on charity or scorn. You wonder sometimes if there's more mercy for the mad in cities than in small villages, but you suspect the answer is no. Isolation is the same everywhere when your mind is slipping. Sometimes you find unexpected grace. On a clear morning, your memory returns in full force, and you remember a joke from your childhood. You share it with your granddaughter, and she laughs, her voice bright as bells. In that laughter you reclaim yourself for a little while, or you remember the precise way to season the harvest stew, and for one meal everyone marvels at your skill. These moments become your lifeline, proof that you're still here, still you, even if only in flashes. Historians still argue about whether communities in the Middle Ages were more forgiving of mental decline, or whether fear and suspicion ruled the day. There's no consensus, just a patchwork of stories, some of kindness, some of cruelty, all coloured by the anxieties of living in a world with few explanations. You develop your own tricks for staying grounded. You tie a knot in your apron each time you finish a task or leave a pebble on the threshold to remind yourself you've locked the door. You hum favourite songs to keep your mind engaged. Repeat family names every morning like a litany. Some days it works. Other days the confusion is too thick and you surrender to the fog. You listen too to the stories of the younger generation, their hopes and worries, their laughter. It anchors you to the present, reminding you that you're not only your memories. And when the worst confusion lifts and you return to yourself, you hold those moments close, refusing to let the world or the creeping shadows of your mind steal them from you. Above all, you endure. You let the days carry you one after another, through clarity and confusion, through kindness and fear. Even as the world grows strange, you find moments of light. A smile, a warm touch, the scent of rosemary in the kitchen. These become your anchors, holding you to yourself, even as your mind wanders. Food. Simple, necessary, and as you grow old in the Middle Ages, increasingly out of reach. You wake each day with hunger gnawing at your stomach, your body craving warmth and energy. But the older you get, the less your table offers. Your teeth ache, your hands tremble, and your body cannot digest what it once did. Yet, hunger doesn't care about age, nor do the pangs of want and the memories of meals past. You remember times of plenty, harvest feasts, the smell of fresh-baked bread, the laughter of a family crowded around a table. But as the years pile on, so do the seasons of scarcity. In youth, you are strong enough to go without, to work longer and eat less. But old age is different. It is winter, in more ways than one. Each mouthful is a challenge, and every season of failed crops or hard times strikes your household doubly hard if you're past your prime. Your place at the table has changed too. Once you helped dish out the meals, ladling stew into bowls, saving the choicest bits for children and guests. Now you sit at the edge, waiting your turn, hoping for a little meat or a heel of bread. If you're lucky, you are surrounded by family who still care, who pass the bowl to you with respect. If not, you're often left with scraps, the dregs of pottage, the bones after the dogs share. In some homes, the elderly are quietly served last with a polite smile or sometimes with averted eyes. Your body betrays you in subtle ways. You can no longer eat what is tough or coarse, the black bread that cracks your teeth, the hard cheese, the stringy meat. Your stomach rebels at the simplest fare. Raw greens cause cramping, spiced dishes bring on heartburn, and even a draught of strong ale can leave you dizzy. You learn to be grateful for thin broth, for stewed beans, for porridge with a sprinkle of salt, meals that are bland but gentle. You watch the young tear into apples, gnaw on roasted bones, and you remember doing the same. Historians still debate whether medieval people understood much about nutrition or the special needs of the elderly. What's clear is that old age turns eating from pleasure into labour. Quirky remedies for your troubles abound. Soak your bread in cider, it'll go down easier. Chew fennel after supper, it'll settle the stomach. Some folk claim that garlic, eaten raw, keeps you strong, or, at the very least, keeps the worst neighbours away. You try whatever you can. Sometimes it helps. More often, it is the ritual of trying that soothes you, rather than the food itself. Diet is a struggle even in good times, but in years of famine the struggle becomes desperation. Winters drag on, stores run low, and you find yourself counting each dried pea and bean in the larder. The young and able-bodied are first in line. You're left to hope that someone remembers your needs. If you have a little saved, you trade it for food, an old brooch for a hunk of cheese, a scrap of cloth for a handful of oats. Some old people grow fiercely protective of their pantry, hiding away a crust of bread or a wedge of cheese for later. Stories circulate of elders caught hoarding, their secret stashes discovered and taken, their dignity stripped along with their supper. Community feasts and church alms offer a slender lifeline. On feast days the church doles out bread and ale to the poor and aged. You join the line, cane in hand, head bowed. Sometimes there is enough for all. Sometimes you leave empty-handed, stomach rumbling, dignity bruised. The towns more fortunate might offer leftovers at their gates, a bowl of cold porridge, a lump of fat, a cup of weak beer. You take what you're given, grateful and resentful at once. Eating in old age is never a private affair. If you have family, every meal is a performance. You try to hide your trembling hands, to swallow your food quietly, to keep from coughing or choking on a crumb. The young watch you with a mix of impatience and pity, urging you to eat up, as if you could simply force youth back into your bones by will alone. Sometimes you wish for solitude, to eat your meagre portion in peace. If you live alone, widowed, childless or abandoned, your struggle is sharper. Each day is a puzzle. How to stretch a loaf for a week, how to catch a few fish, how to barter for a cup of milk or a handful of dried fruit. You walk the roadsides, foraging for wild greens and roots. You grow cunning, trading chores for meals, gathering whatever scraps you can. You become invisible in the marketplace, but you learn to survive by watching and waiting, by seizing every small chance that comes your way. You hear stories of miracle foods, the old widow who swears by nettle soup, the farmer who credits his long life to onion gruel, the shepherd who never fell ill because he drank goat's milk every day. Historians still argue whether any of these foods made a real difference or if hope alone sustained the elderly through the leanest years. Still, you cling to these tales, making a ritual of the foods you can still find, savouring each as if it might grant you another year. Sometimes you remember the foods of your childhood, the wild berries, the first spring eggs, the honey cakes at festival time. These memories become sharper than your present meals, filling you with longing and sometimes with a sweetness that lingers long after hunger returns. You wake to the sound of voices, somewhere distant, muffled by the walls of your narrow room. For a moment you hope someone is coming to see you, to share a word or bring you a little bread. Instead, the sounds drift past. A neighbour's laughter, a peddler calling his wares, the trundle of cartwheels over rutted earth. You are left with your own breath and the creak of your bones. In the Middle Ages, old age is as much about loneliness as it is about pain or hunger. You may be surrounded by people, but you often feel like a shadow moving through a world too busy, too frightened or too superstitious to care for its elders. Once your place in the family was unshakable. You were needed. Another pair of hands, a guardian of stories, a link in the chain of memory stretching back generations. But as the years wore on and your usefulness faded, you felt yourself drifting to the margins. In some villages, elders are respected as keepers of wisdom, but more often they are regarded with suspicion, as if age itself were a kind of taint. You become a burden, a mouth to feed, a risk to household survival. There are too many mouths and not enough bread, so it is easier to set you aside, to treat you as an afterthought. If you are fortunate, you still have family who value your presence, who fetch water for you, listen to your stories, tuck extra bits of food into your bowl. Perhaps a grandchild curls beside you on cold nights, their warm body a reminder that you still belong. But many are not so lucky. Widows and widowers, childless elders, those with no kin nearby. These slip further into the background with every passing year. You begin to fade from the collective memory, and with that fading comes an ache more persistent than hunger or pain. Even if you live among others, loneliness finds a way to root itself in the spaces between you. The young hurry past, busy with chores, uninterested in the slow stories of old bones and lost loves. Neighbours who once laughed at your table now have their own troubles and rarely visit. Sometimes your only companion is the cat by the hearth, or the rooster crowing in the yard. There is a running joke. If you want a good listener, talk to the dog. In truth, you talk to animals more and more grateful for their silent company. The village itself can feel hostile. Rumours swirl around the old, stories of curses, evil eyes, the bad wind that seems to blow from certain doorways. If you suffer from confusion or say strange things, suspicion gathers like storm clouds. There are whispers that you bring bad luck or sickness, that your presence spoils the milk or sours the bread. Some families even avoid inviting old relatives to celebrations, fearing an unlucky shadow will fall across the feast. Historians still argue how widespread these superstitions were, but enough stories survive to make you wary of drawing attention to yourself. Church might seem a refuge, but even there, the old can be invisible. The priest prays for the frail and feeble, but the congregation's eyes slide past you, focused on their own cares. At the parish alms table, you wait at the end of the line, patient and silent, hoping for a scrap of bread, a kind word, a fleeting acknowledgement that you are still part of the flock. Some are generous, but others avoid meeting your gaze. It is easier for them to pretend you do not see their discomfort, their relief at not being you. If you have managed to keep a sharp mind, you might still be asked for advice on rare occasions, a dispute over a boundary stone, a memory of old times, but such requests grow fewer every year. Your stories begin to sound like fables, your advice like the echo of another world. The young listen politely, then do as they please. You wonder if anything you say will survive after you're gone. On feast days and market days, you see other elders gathered at the edges of crowds, clustering like fallen leaves in the shade. You share a nod or a brief word, a flicker of solidarity. There is comfort in knowing you are not the only one left behind by the march of time, yet even this comfort is bittersweet. Each year there are fewer of you, and the ones who remain are bent, quieter, more cautious with their words. Sometimes you find yourself resented, not just forgotten. In lean times you might overhear harsh words. If not for the old, there would be more for the young. Or more bluntly, why must we feed those who cannot work? There are tales of elders abandoned in the woods, left in remote huts to die, or given only what they could carry. Historians still argue how common such acts truly were. Some say they were rare, others that they were the desperate answer to famine's cruelty. Whatever the truth, the fear is real. You take care to be as little trouble as possible, to keep your needs small and your voice quieter still. Superstition can cut both ways. In some places, the old are believed to have power, an ability to bless or curse, to intercede with the spirits or with God. People come to you quietly for charms or prayers, to whisper requests or seek your luck. For a moment you feel seen, even important. But this visibility is fragile. If a storm follows your blessing, or if a sick child worsens after you pray, the village's gratitude turns quickly to suspicion. Quirky remedies for loneliness exist too. Some suggest keeping a sprig of rosemary at your window to draw visitors, or leaving your door ajar with bread on the sill to invite good company. You try these rituals because they give you hope, not because you truly believe in magic. More reliable are the routines you craft for yourself. The sweeping of the doorstep, the tending of a small patch of herbs, the lighting of a candle at dusk. These small acts tether you to the world, give shape to the hours, and remind you that you exist. Sometimes you resist loneliness with rebellion. You join in the village celebrations, dance at the edge of the square, sing loudest at the harvest festival. You remind the young of the wildness that still lives in your heart. For a little while, you're not a burden or a relic, but a force, someone to be admired, or at least remembered. The next day you pay for it with aching bones and a hoarse voice, but the memory is worth it. There are rare households where the old are cherished, where your stories are treasures and your hands are still welcome at the loom or the hearth. In these places, loneliness is a guest, not a master. The difference you realize is not in wealth or status, but in the hearts of those around you. Some people understand that one day they too will grow old, and they honor that future by honoring you. Historians still argue whether medieval society was fundamentally cold or just overwhelmed by the needs of survival. You know only your own experience, that love, when it comes, is the best defense against loneliness. A warm smile, a shared meal, a hand held in the dark, these small mercies become your lifelines. As you sit by your window, watching the play of light and shadow across the yard, you let your mind wander through the memories of love and belonging you have known. You hold these moments close, a quiet rebellion against the world's indifference. In the end, you're not just an old woman or man fading into the background. You're the sum of all the days you have lived, all the love you have given and received. Even if the world forgets you, you remember yourself, and that is something no one can take. You roll over on your straw mattress, wincing at the ache in your back, and hear the usual morning sounds, the scrape of a broom, the clatter of a pot, the bustle of people starting their day. You wish you could greet the morning with the energy you once had, but age weighs you down in more ways than one. As you try to rise, your joints creak and your muscles complain, a constant reminder that rest in this world is never truly restorative. What's worse, there is no such thing as a peaceful retirement. For most in the Middle Ages, you work until your body gives out, and there are no safety nets to catch you. The very concept of retirement as you know it doesn't exist. No pensions, no savings stashed away, no gentle afternoons in a sunny garden, reflecting on your youth. You are a part of the household economy until your final days, expected to contribute whatever you can. Tending animals, mending clothing, rocking a baby, pulling weeds from the garden. Each task feels heavier with age, but you keep going because you must. Stopping means slipping out of the community's good graces, becoming useless, an extra mouth when there is never quite enough to go around. You remember stories from your youth, tales of old kings or abbots who retired to a monastery, living out their days in prayer and quiet. But those were men of means, people with land and gold and the luxury of choice. For everyone else, the so-called retirement plan is survival, making yourself useful in whatever small way you can manage, hoping that the family will keep you around for another season. If you're strong and lucky, you might work in the fields into your 50s, swinging a scythe or carrying water. But as your back bows and your grip weakens, your tasks shrink. You move from field to kitchen, from kitchen to fireside, always searching for something that won't make you wince with every motion. Your value is measured by your utility. Are you still able to spin wool? Can you mend torn cloaks or watch over children? Even if you can do little, your presence helps. Another pair of eyes in a household always at risk of theft or fire. Another voice to teach the little ones their prayers. For women, the transition can be especially sharp. Once you're past childbearing age, your status in the household shifts. You're still expected to help, of course, but you may find yourself competing for space with daughters-in-law or younger sisters. Your role as matriarch is never secure, always at risk of being nudged aside by younger, stronger women. Historians still argue about the real power of old women in the medieval home. Some say grandmothers ruled the roost, while others insist they were tolerated only so long as they contributed. You might joke with your friends about the great medieval retirement, sitting by the fire watching everyone else sweat and strain, but the laughter is bitter because you know the truth. If you stop working, you risk being cast out or left to fend for yourself. There are stories, whispered on winter nights, of elders sent to the poorhouse, a grim institution where the old are warehoused with the sick and the mad. The conditions are harsh, the food worse, the company a reminder of everything you've lost. The poorhouse is the final stop for many who outlive their strength or their usefulness. You hear tales of endless rows of straw pallets, the air thick with coughs and the sour smell of old wounds. The attendants do their best, but there are too few hands for too many mouths. Meals are simple, often meagre. Bread and broth, maybe a bit of cheese on feast days. There's no privacy, no comfort, no dignity beyond what you can salvage in small acts of kindness or memory. Even for those who remain with family, the risks are real. If your son falls ill, if the harvest fails, if the family must choose between feeding the children or the grandparents, the choice is rarely in your favour. You do what you can to avoid becoming a burden. Eating less, working harder, hiding your aches and pains. You remind yourself that you survived worse as a child. Famine, plague, war. But old age strips away resilience, leaving you vulnerable to the whims of fortune and the patience of others. There are no old age charities, no guilds or brotherhoods offering pensions. Sometimes the parish might offer a bit of support. Alms for the poor, a loaf of bread, a place by the church fire on a cold night. But these are unreliable gifts dependent on the charity of others and the favour of the local priest. You may find yourself standing in the cold, cap in hand, hoping for a kindness that doesn't always come. Quirky solutions for survival spring up everywhere. Some elders take in other old people, pooling their resources and creating makeshift households, a granny house, as the children call it, filled with faded laughter and the creak of old bones. Others trade small services for food, storytelling for a bit of stew, a blessing for a crust of bread, the weaving of a basket for a mug of ale. These arrangements are fragile, but they bring a sense of dignity, a reminder that you still have something to offer. In rare cases, old craftsmen and craftswomen hold on to a sliver of independence, their skills valued enough to secure a place in the local guild or a little respect at the market. If you can make a good shoe, a sturdy pot, a fine linen, there's always someone willing to trade. But even these skills fade with age, your hands losing their cunning, your eyes failing in the lamplight. You keep trying, even when you know your work is not what it once was. Historians still debate whether medieval elders accepted their fate with stoicism or bitterness. In truth, you know both feelings well. Some days you are grateful for the small mercies, a warm fire, a full belly, the sound of children's laughter. Other days you rage against the unfairness, the invisibility, the way the world has no place for the old except at the edge. You find small ways to assert yourself, even now. You tell stories to the young, passing down history and warning them of old mistakes. You guard the household's traditions, the way to sow beans, the secret of the best rye bread, the prayer that brings good weather. In this you are irreplaceable, the last link to a world that is always vanishing. Sometimes you dream of escape, of a place where the old are honoured and cared for, where rest is a right, not a privilege. You imagine a monastery cell, quiet and warm, the air filled with the scent of beeswax and baking bread. Or you picture a sunny bench in a walled garden, time stretching out before you, yours to do with as you please. These dreams are bittersweet, made sharper by the knowledge that they will never be real for you. But you hold on to your pride as best you can. You make yourself useful. You refuse to disappear, to become invisible. You keep working, even when every joint protests, because working is living, and living is all you have left. In the end, that is the only retirement the Middle Ages offers, the chance to keep going, as long as you possibly can, until the day comes when you simply can't go any farther. And when that day comes, you hope for gentleness, a hand to hold, a kind word, a memory of better days. You hope your final service will be remembered, that your place in the world, however small, mattered. You hope you're not forgotten. You're awake before dawn, listening to the slow drip of rain against the roof and the groaning timbers above your head. Even beneath your woolen blanket, the cold seeps into your bones. The air feels heavy and damp, promising another day when every joint and muscle will ache just to remind you you're alive. Medieval homes aren't kind to old bodies, especially when you're no longer young enough to chop your own firewood or patch a leaky roof. Medieval houses are rough places, whether you live in a cramped town tenement or a drafty village cottage. Thick stone walls sweat with moisture. Thatched roofs leak when the wind is high. The tiny windows, if you're lucky enough to have glass, are clouded and draughty, and most are simply covered with oiled cloth or wooden shutters. You shuffle across a floor that is often just packed earth, sometimes covered with stale rushes that only trap more dampness underneath. In winter, the hearth is the centre of life, but the fire burns low because wood is precious and expensive. You huddle as close as you dare, rubbing your hands, but the cold always wins. Every morning your joints remind you of the chill. Fingers stiff and swollen, knees that threaten to buckle with every step, hips that grind and crack as you move from bed to stool. The cold gets into your bones, the neighbours say, and you believe it. It feels as if the weather is conspiring with time to wear you down, each grey day eroding your strength a little more. You remember a time when you were impervious to the cold, running barefoot in the snow as a child. Now you wrap yourself in layers, shawls, old cloaks, tattered woolens, and still the ache persists. If you live in a town, your home may be stacked with others, one floor above another. There is little privacy and less comfort. At night the walls echo with the noise of neighbours, footsteps, snoring, babies crying, lovers quarrelling, the distant clang of the church bell marking each hour. You long for silence and warmth, but the world is crowded and cold. In the countryside, your cottage stands apart, battered by wind and rain. The fields around you turn to mud, and you fear the winter's hunger as much as the chill. You listen for the howl of wolves, or the scuttle of rats in the thatch, always a threat to your store of grain or your peace of mind. You are always on guard against the damp. It creeps in through every crack, bringing with it a host of ills, coughs, chills, and the ever-present ache of rheumatism. Wrap your feet, the wise women say, and hang onions in the rafters to keep out sickness. You obey, stuffing rags into your boots, hanging bunches of herbs and garlic, anything to ward off the wet and cold. Still you cough in the night and wake with a chest full of phlegm. Historians still debate whether these home remedies helped much, but hope is better than despair. Firewood is never plentiful enough. You ration it carefully, burning only what you must. If you are lucky, a grandchild or neighbour brings you a few sticks now and then. If not, you steal outside, braving the icy mud to gather what you can. Sometimes you trade an old scarf or a story for a bit of kindling, the currency of survival. You remember the better times, the great fires of festival days, but such warmth is rare now. On the worst days, you wonder if the cold will simply claim you, slipping into your bones and never leaving. Each day is shaped by weather and light. You rise with the sun and sleep when darkness falls, as candles are precious, and you cannot afford to burn tallow just for comfort. In winter, darkness rules. You move through endless twilight, straining to see by the fire's glow. When storms rage outside, you huddle with whatever company you have. Family, neighbours, the old cat curled on your lap. These shared hardships forge a kind of community, but also a resignation. You are all prisoners of the seasons. Some days you find the energy to sweep the rushes, patch the roof with whatever scrap you can find, or rearrange your meagre bedding to escape a persistent draught. Other days, you simply endure, clutching a mug of weak ale and counting the hours until you can crawl back beneath your blanket. Keep moving or the cold will catch you, the old men say. You take their advice, however little you believe it. Sometimes you tell yourself the pain is proof of life. You are not alone in your misery. The old gather by the church porch on sunny days, warming themselves like lizards on the stones. They swap stories of cold winters past, arguing over which was the worst. The year of the deep snow, one insists. No, the year the river froze. It's a contest with no winner, only the shared satisfaction of having survived so many seasons. Superstition shapes the way people handle the cold. Some claim that the devil slips into houses through the north wind, bringing aches and fevers. Others believe in charms. Rowan twigs hung over the door, a horseshoe above the hearth, salt scattered across the threshold. If you catch a chill that lingers, neighbours whisper about curses or angry ancestors. You burn a little rosemary, hoping the smoke will chase away bad spirits and bad weather alike. Whether these beliefs have any effect, historians still argue, but they fill the long, cold nights with a sense of purpose. Quirky remedies for the cold are everywhere. Some swear by sleeping with a hot stone at your feet, others stuff straw into their boots or wrap their limbs in sheep's wool. If you're lucky enough to keep a dog, you let it share your bed. Its warmth worth the fleas and the smell. In the worst winters, people sleep in shifts, huddling together in a desperate attempt to preserve what little heat they have. Body warmth saves lives, the wise women say, and you don't argue. You cling to any comfort you can find. The structure of your home rarely helps. In towns, streets flood with filth and rain. The wind rattles the shutters and damp creeps into your bedding. In villages, the landscape itself seems to conspire against you. Boggy fields, flooded streams, the endless mud. Each winter, you wonder if the roof will hold. if the walls will keep out the worst of the storm. You patch and repair, but everything crumbles in the end. On the best days, you find beauty despite it all. The fire flickers on the walls, casting shapes you remember from childhood. Snow blankets the ground outside, muffling the world and making your little home feel safer, almost magical. You sip a cup of warm broth and listen to the laughter of children, a reminder that life continues despite the cold. You wrap yourself in a blanket, closing your eyes against the ache, and let memory carry you to warmer times. Historians still debate how much comfort the medieval home could truly provide, whether the hearth was a source of solace or just another battlefield against the elements. You know only what you have lived, that warmth is a blessing, cold a curse, and old bones bear the worst of it. Sometimes you joke with your neighbours about your aching joints. My knees can predict rain better than the priest. Laughter helps, even as the pain lingers. You dream of spring, of green shoots and sunlight, of a world where the ache in your bones might ease, if only for a few precious weeks. Until then, you endure. You stoke the fire when you can, patch the roof, bundle yourself in every rag and scrap of wool you own. You whisper a prayer for warmth and light, knowing that each new day survived is a victory. You tell yourself the ache means you're still here, still living, still fighting, even as the world grows cold around you. Night falls early in your world, and with it comes a deep, unsettling darkness that fills every corner of your small home. The fire shrinks to glowing embers, and you feel the cold pressing in against the walls, thick as a woolen cloak. You listen to the hush of sleeping animals, the creak of beams overhead, the faint sound of a neighbour coughing through the wall. For a few hours the village goes quiet, but for the elderly, sleep is never easy, and night is often more enemy than friend. Once you could close your eyes and drift into dreams almost instantly. Now you toss and turn on your straw-filled mattress, searching for a comfortable position, aching in every joint. Sleep slips from your grasp like a mischievous spirit just out of reach. You count the pains in your body instead of sheep, the throb in your jaw where a tooth used to be, the relentless cramp in your calf, the fiery protest in your back when you shift your weight. You learn to expect these nighttime torments, another gift of growing old in the Middle Ages. You're not alone in your misery. Old friends complain too on the rare mornings when you gather by the well. The pain keeps me up, says one. My bones ache more when the wind blows, says another. You compare remedies, each more desperate than the last. Rubbing vinegar into your knees, tying a red thread around your wrist, stuffing warm stones under the blanket. Some people even place a clove of garlic under their pillow, swearing it keeps bad spirits away and brings restful dreams. Historians still argue about the power of such folk rituals. Maybe the comfort lies not in the ritual itself, but in the hope it gives. You notice your hearing isn't what it once was, and at night every little sound seems bigger, sharper, stranger. The house cracks and sighs. A mouse scurries across the floor. Far away someone screams, a fox in the forest, or perhaps something worse. Your imagination fills the dark with old fears, restless ghosts, vengeful fairies, the souls of those who died hungry or angry. You whisper a prayer and hope it is enough to keep the shadows at bay. Sleep is broken and shallow. You wake many times, shifting, sighing, waiting for relief that doesn't come. The bed is never quite right. Too hard, too cold, too narrow to stretch out. Some nights you lie awake, knees tucked to your chest, listening to the wind rattle the shutters. You try to remember happier nights, festivals when the house was full of song, or summers when you fell asleep beneath the stars. Those memories are bright, but they do not bring rest. If you live with others, their restlessness seeps into yours. Children wake crying from nightmares. A coughing spouse keeps you on edge. The young rise early, their energy reminding you of all you've lost. In crowded homes, privacy is a dream. Snores, sighs, and murmured conversations leak through the walls. You envy those who can still sleep soundly, But you remember too that even youth cannot always escape the fears of the night. Sometimes your own worries keep you awake. You count the debts owed, the food left in the larder, the number of winters you might still have to endure. You replay old arguments, old regrets, old losses, as if they might resolve themselves in the dark. Let it go, you whisper to yourself, but your mind refuses to quiet. The night amplifies everything. The hunger in your belly, the ache in your soul, the dread of what tomorrow might bring. You try different tricks to woo sleep, reciting prayers, repeating nursery rhymes, humming old songs beneath your breath. Sometimes you drift off for a few precious hours, only to be jolted awake by a cramp or a bad dream. On the worst nights you do not sleep at all. You lie in darkness waiting for the dawn. Nightmares are another unwelcome companion. In your dreams, old fears come to life. Wolves at the door, lost children, fires sweeping through the village. Sometimes the faces of those you have lost appear, or you dream of being young again, only to wake to the cruel ache of age. You whisper charms to keep nightmares away. Blessed Mary, watch my sleep. You tuck a sprig of rue beneath your pillow or wear a cross close to your heart. The church teaches that restless sleep can be a sign of sin or even the influence of evil. You pray for forgiveness, for peace, for just one night without pain or fear. Sometimes you envy the animals their rest. The dog curls up by the fire snoring contentedly. The chickens roost in their coop, heads tucked beneath their wings. You wonder what it would be like to sleep without fear, to close your eyes and trust the world to keep you safe until morning. Historians still debate the nature of sleep in the medieval world. Some claim that people slept in 2 shifts, an early sleep, a waking period in the night, and a second sleep before dawn. Others say that insomnia was simply endured, another hardship among many. What is certain is that for the old, night is the longest trial, and sleep the most fragile blessing. On rare nights you find comfort. The fire burns a little brighter, the blankets are less scratchy, the wind is calm. You listen to the breathing of those you love, and for a moment your heart quiets. You drift into dreams that are gentle, memories of childhood, or feasts or laughter echoing beneath the stars. You wake before dawn, stiff but grateful for the gift of rest, however brief. There are times, too, when you find meaning in the sleepless hours. The world is silent and you're alone with your thoughts. You remember loved ones, both living and gone. You pray for those you care for, asking the saints to watch over them. You listen to the rhythm of your own breath, the beat of your heart, and marvel that you're still here, still fighting, still alive. You learn to make peace with sleeplessness. You let the night be what it is, a passage of time, a test of patience, a reminder that even the strongest must yield to age. You accept the aches and fears, knowing they are part of the journey. Sometimes, in the quiet, you even find a kind of wisdom, that darkness passes, that morning always comes, and that each new day, for all its troubles, is still a gift. And so you meet the dawn, eyes heavy, limbs sore, but spirit unbroken. You rise from your hard bed, shake the straw from your cloak, and greet another day. The trials of the night fade in the light of morning, and you carry on as you always have, through pain, through fear, through endless sleepless nights. You stand in the middle of your chilly room, stretching your back and feeling pain radiate through your hips, your shoulders, your knees, pain that never seems to let go. As you grow old in the Middle Ages, chronic pain is your constant companion, woven into every moment of waking and even haunting your sleep. In a world before painkillers, before soothing balms and gentle hands, there's no mercy for aching bodies. You learn, with grim acceptance, that agony is the price of survival. The pain is different every day, shifting and settling into new corners of your body. Some mornings, your hands are so stiff you can barely lace your tunic. Other days, your neck aches so sharply you can hardly turn your head. Your feet throb after the shortest walk, and sometimes your back seizes up completely, sending you to the floor with a gasp. You grit your teeth and press on because everyone expects you to. There is no time for rest. no room for weakness. People around you try to help in the ways they know. The village wise woman brews you a bitter tea from willow bark or poppy seeds, telling you to sip slowly, to let the bitterness soak into your bones. Sometimes it dulls the ache for an hour or two, but more often it just makes you sleepy, your dreams filled with fog and half-remembered faces. If you're desperate, you chew raw bark or wrap your joints in rags soaked with vinegar, hoping the sharp scent will distract your mind from the pain. Historians still argue over how effective these medieval remedies truly were. Some believe the small reliefs they brought were mostly the result of hope, not science. Superstition provides its own set of answers. You might wear a charm around your neck, a piece of iron or a polished stone, said to draw away the pain. Others pin bits of red thread to their sleeves or mutter prayers to St. Roch, patron of the sick and suffering. The local priest might visit, offering blessings and holy water, assuring you that suffering draws you closer to God. Sometimes the blessing soothes your spirit, if not your body. But most of the time, pain is simply endured. There is no choice and no end in sight. You wake with pain, walk with pain, eat and sleep with pain. You accept it as a feature of life, as familiar as hunger or the turning of the seasons. You find ways to cope, moving slowly, resting when you can, focusing on the tasks that are most important. You learn not to complain. Everyone has their own pain, and your suffering is no more special than anyone else's. Work never stops, and it's made harder by every flare and twinge. Gathering wood is a trial, every step a new chance for agony. Kneading bread becomes a contest between your aching wrists and the stubborn dough. Even the simple act of drawing water from the well can send pain shooting up your arms. You get creative, using both hands, leaning your whole body into tasks you once managed with a flick of the wrist. You envy the young their easy grace, but you remind yourself that you once had it too. On days when the pain is worst, you withdraw. You sit by the hearth, rubbing your knees and staring into the fire. You keep your hands busy, spinning wool or mending clothes, anything to distract yourself. You tell stories to children, tales of knights and dragons, of brave queens and cunning peasants. The children listen wide-eyed, and for a little while your pain fades into the background. Pain is isolating. Even those who love you cannot understand the sharpness of each movement, the dull ache that lingers after every chore. You try to hide your discomfort, putting on a brave face for family and neighbours. Sometimes, though, it's too much, and you snap at a careless word or gesture. You apologise, but the words taste bitter. You know you're not yourself on these days, but pain makes a stranger of everyone in the end. There are moments of kindness. A grandchild offers a cushion for your chair. A neighbour brings you a handful of wildflowers or a pot of honey, hoping it will lift your spirits. On market days, friends share the latest cure, a new herb, a new prayer, a new way to rub your aching joints. Some suggest soaking your feet in warm water, others swear by a poultice of mashed leeks and lard. You try them all, clinging to hope as much as healing. Sometimes humour helps. You joke about your bones being made of old wood, about the weather changing with every creak in your knees. I'm a walking almanac, you laugh, though the humour has an edge. The children giggle, but the adults look away, uncomfortable with what the joke really means. Still, you persist. If you can't banish the pain, you can at least make it a little less heavy. At night, pain can feel unbearable. The bed is too hard, the straw too lumpy. You turn and turn, searching for relief, but find only exhaustion. You pray for sleep, for dreams that will lift you out of your body. On the best nights, you drift into forgetfulness for a few hours. On the worst, you lie awake, teeth gritted, listening to the sounds of others breathing deeply, blessedly free from your torment. Historians still debate how medieval people understood chronic pain. Some argue that it was seen as divine punishment, a test of faith or a sign of lingering sin. Others say it was simply accepted as an unavoidable part of aging, a companion to be acknowledged but never pitied. What is certain is that pain shapes your world, dictating what you can and cannot do, colouring every interaction with others. There are times when despair creeps in. You wonder if life is still worth living, if the endless ache will ever end. You remember friends who slipped away quietly, their bodies finally giving out. You hope your own end will be peaceful, not dragged out by pain. In those moments you find comfort where you can, in faith, in memory, in the laughter of children, in the warmth of the fire. You remind yourself that you have survived worse, and that even now you are still here. You hold on to small joys, moments when the pain lessens, a warm bath on a rare sunny day, the scent of herbs drying above the hearth, the sound of music drifting from the village square. You cling to the routines that give your life structure, refusing to be defined only by what hurts. Quirky cures and whispered prayers fill your days. You rub garlic on your joints, sleep with a penny beneath your pillow, recite charms against the evil wind that brings pain. Some work, most do not, but the ritual itself is a comfort. You keep moving, keep hoping, keep trying, because to stop is to surrender. The young watch you and wonder how you endure. You tell them simply, you do what you must. It's a truth as old as time. Pain is a teacher, if a cruel one, and in your endurance there is a stubborn pride. You have not given in. You're still living, still fighting, still finding moments of grace amid the agony. In the end, you learn to live with pain. It is the price of your years, a badge of survival in a world that gives little and asks much. You carry it with you, not as a punishment, but as proof that you have endured. And so you go on, step by painful step, into the uncertain morning. You sit by the window watching the world go about its business, and you feel the weight of all you've learned over the years, a life's worth of lessons, mistakes, and small victories. In a world that worships youth, you've gained the kind of wisdom only hardship can buy. You would think such knowledge would make you valued, even cherished. But in the Middle Ages, wisdom in old age is a strange thing, sometimes treasured, more often feared, and occasionally dangerous. You've lived through wars and famines, storms and plagues, lost friends and seen new generations born. Your memory is a treasury of stories, some heroic, some tragic, some simply absurd. You have learned the tricks of the fields and the kitchen, the subtle language of village alliances, the tiny clues in weather and animal behaviour that mean the difference between a good harvest and disaster. Your advice is grounded in experience, never theoretical, always shaped by the rough, unpredictable facts of daily medieval life. Yet the irony is hard to miss. The older you get, the less people seem to want to hear from you. Sometimes, the young listen with a polite nod, eager to get on with their chores. Sometimes, they even come seeking your counsel in secret, when a cow is ill or a child won't sleep, hoping your knowledge will tip the scales in their favour. But just as often, your words are dismissed as the ramblings of old bones, outdated, irrelevant, even suspicious. You have to laugh at the contradiction. One moment, you're praised for your memory of a local boundaries or your recipe for curing ham. The next, you're eyed with distrust because you know too much. The line between wisdom and suspicion is fine, and you walk it every day. For women, this paradox is sharper, even perilous. A wise old woman, skilled in herbs and midwifery, is an asset in times of need. But let her make a wrong prediction, or cross a powerful neighbour, and she's suddenly the village witch. Whispered accusations float through the dark. She has the evil eye. She talks to spirits. She brings misfortune just by looking at you. The fear is worse for the unmarried or widowed, the women without men to control them. Historians still debate whether the infamous witch hunts had more to do with women's wisdom, or with men's fears of what they could not understand. You've seen it happen. The midwife who delivered every healthy baby for years is suddenly blamed for a run of miscarriages. The herb woman whose tea soothed fevers is accused of causing a rash of illness. Even you, with your harmless advice about planting by the moon, or storing apples in straw, have drawn side-eye from the suspicious. You guard your words, never offering help too freely, never showing off what you know. Keep your wisdom close, your mother once told you. It's safer that way. Men too are not immune to suspicion. especially if they show too much cleverness or independence in their old age. The old mason who remembers the secret passages under the castle is viewed with suspicion. The shepherd who knows where wolves' den is whispered about in taverns. Old soldiers are sometimes praised for their tales, but also feared. What secrets do they hold, and whose side are they truly on? Historians still argue whether such fears were justified or simply projections of younger people's anxieties. Jokes about wisdom and age are common, often used to keep old people in their place. Old Peter can tell you when the last flood was, but he can't remember where he left his ale. Or, she knows the secret of good bread, but not how to hold her tongue. You laugh with the rest because it's safer than letting the resentment show. Your wisdom is a currency, but a volatile one. You trade stories for a little respect, a bit of food, a place by the fire. You teach children the names of herbs, the timing of planting, the dangers of certain mushrooms. You show them how to spot the signs of a coming storm, how to mend a broken fence, how to calm a frightened animal. Sometimes they listen. Sometimes they forget as soon as you turn your back. You wonder if anything you know will outlive you. You become wary, learning when to speak and when to keep silent. You see the patterns in people, who values knowledge, who fears it, who will turn on you when the wind changes. You become adept at reading the room, a skill as necessary as any trade. Some days it feels like a burden, to have so much to give and so few willing to accept it. Sometimes wisdom brings you joy. You watch a child learn to tie a knot the way you taught them, or see your granddaughter prepare a stew just as you once did. You find comfort in small victories, problems solved, quarrels averted, disasters avoided. These are your legacy, even if no one writes them down. But the darker side of wisdom is always there. You know too well the risk of being seen as too clever. In times of fear, wisdom is dangerous. When a cow dies mysteriously, when the weather won't turn, when the bread won't rise, suspicion always turns to those who know the most. You make yourself small, offering advice only when asked, never claiming credit when things go well. Superstition shadows every wise act. People may come to you for charms and prayers, for herbal cures and secret words. But if your charm fails or your cure brings no relief, they might blame you for the misfortune. You keep a careful balance, never promising more than you can deliver, always sharing credit with the saints or the weather. It was St. Bridget who brought the baby safely, you say, not me. Historians still argue whether this humility was wisdom, survival instinct, or both. You remember the stories of those who didn't hide their knowledge, who dared too much, or trusted too freely. The old man who mapped the stars was accused of devilry. The woman who brewed a healing tea was said to consort with spirits. Their fates serve as warnings. You do what you must to avoid their end. Still, you cling to your wisdom, your stories, your quiet pride. You share what you can, when you can, in ways that keep you safe. You find satisfaction in knowing things others don't, in solving puzzles that stump the young. Sometimes you find yourself smiling, remembering how much you've learned, how much you have survived. You wonder if things will ever change, if there will come a time when old age and wisdom are honoured, not feared. Historians still argue about whether that day has ever existed, or ever will. In your own life, you know only that wisdom is double-edged, a gift, a curse, a shield, and sometimes a target. So you sit by your window watching the world spin on and hold your knowledge close. You whisper old songs to yourself, practice the small magics of daily life, and hope that, when you're gone, some scrap of what you know will linger, a seed planted in the mind of someone young waiting for the right moment to bloom. It's a chill evening, mist creeping low in the yard, and you notice the crows circling overhead, dark, watchful, as if counting down the days. In your bones, you sense what everyone in the Middle Ages knows from an early age. Death is never far. Yet growing old brings a peculiar new ritual, one that most would rather not discuss. You become an expert in your own funeral, thinking about it, preparing for it, sometimes with a mixture of grim humour and resignation. In a world where sudden death is common but long life is rare, the elderly become morbidly practical, obsessed with the details of their exit. You realise, perhaps for the first time, that preparing for death is a kind of medieval hobby. It starts small, a casual remark at market. "I won't need a new cloak this year," draws knowing smiles. Friends your age compare notes on which carpenter makes the best coffins, whose shroud is the softest, who keeps their graveyard well tended. You hear stories of the miller's widow who saved a fine linen sheet for her burial, hiding it in a chest beneath her bed for decades. "Better safe than sorry," she said, "and better buried with something nice." Jokes circulate among the old. If you want something done right, do it yourself, especially your funeral. You inspect the churchyard, imagining which spot will be yours. The best graves are close to the chapel, safe from wandering animals and, more importantly, close to the prayers of the living. The worst spots are damp, overgrown, prone to flooding, or shadowed by thorny hedges. Some families squabble over plots for years, jealously guarding a sunny spot as if it were gold. The poor and friendless worry about being buried in a communal grave. No marker, no prayers, just another body in the earth. Historians still argue how much status was attached to burial places, but everyone knows the old desire a little dignity in the end. The shroud, too, becomes a matter of pride and superstition. You set aside your best linen, embroidering it quietly if your fingers still allow. Some folk believe it's bad luck to speak of such things, but the prudent ignore this, careful to have a shroud ready lest death catch them unprepared. There's a kind of comfort in this preparation. It gives you a little control, a way to thumb your nose at fate. Choosing who will carry you to your grave is another worry. Some leave strict instructions: this son, not that one. The strongest neighbour, never the drunkard down the lane. You drop hints, hoping your wishes will be remembered when the time comes. It becomes a quiet contest among the old, whose funeral will be best attended, whose coffin will be heaviest with flowers, who will be missed the most. You know which friends can be counted on for honest tears and which for polite silence. Prayers for the dead are not taken lightly. You hope for a good priest, one who will ring the bell, sing the proper chants, and say your name without rushing. You save a coin or two, tucked into your best apron or hidden in a jar to pay for extra prayers. The more prayers, the smoother your journey through purgatory, everyone says. There's a quiet dread among the old that a hasty burial, with no one to mourn you, might leave your soul wandering, stuck between worlds. This fear is so strong that people sometimes leave instructions to have masses said in their name long after they're gone. Whether these rites actually speed the journey to heaven, or are just a comfort for the living, historians still debate, but you cling to the hope anyway. Sometimes you find yourself cataloguing your possessions, no matter how humble. The good spoon, the silver thimble, the woolen scarf you wore at your wedding. You wonder who will inherit each thing. You hide small treasures in unlikely places, behind loose stones beneath the rushes in a crack in the chimney. Children and grandchildren will argue over these things one day, perhaps cursing your trickery, perhaps marvelling at your cunning. Even now you smile at the thought, a final game played from beyond the grave. Conversations among your friends often turn to the afterlife. The young don't want to hear it, but the old trade tales of ghosts and visions, of relatives returning in dreams to warn or comfort. Some claim to have seen the spirits of the newly dead hovering near the churchyard, waiting for a last prayer or a favourite song. There are stories, always stories, of lights dancing on the moor, of bells ringing with no one near, of a dog howling at midnight as a sign that a soul is passing. Historians still argue how seriously these tales were taken, but to the elderly, they are woven into the fabric of daily life. Some people become preoccupied with their sins, certain that old quarrels or small thefts might weigh against them on Judgment Day. You see neighbours making amends, returning borrowed items or paying debts long forgotten. You try to do the same, but wonder if it's enough. The confessional becomes your second home. You rehearse apologies and recite prayers, hoping your slate will be clean when the time comes. The approach of death changes how you see the world. You find yourself savouring small details, a sunrise, the taste of fresh bread, the laughter of children. At the same time, you become more practical, less patient with nonsense. There's a bluntness that comes with proximity to the grave. You speak your mind more freely, knowing you have little to lose. Younger people sometimes find this unnerving, but you shrug. Who else will tell the truth if not you? Jokes about death pepper every conversation. Save me a seat by the fire, you tell your neighbour, and don't let the priest forget my name. At harvest, you quip that you're ready to trade your sickle for a pair of angel's wings. Gallows humour becomes your armour. If you can laugh at death, maybe you can rob it of some of its sting. There are, of course, those who try to avoid the topic entirely, pretending that age is just another phase and death is still far off. You watch them with a mixture of pity and amusement. They busy themselves with chores, deny their ailments, refuse to make a will. But you know the truth, in the Middle Ages the wise prepare early, because tomorrow is never promised. You take a kind of pride in your preparations. Your shroud is folded neatly, your burial coin hidden, your wishes whispered to those who care enough to listen. There is dignity in this, and a measure of defiance. You have survived famine and plague, sorrow and disappointment. You intend to survive death too in the stories people tell and the small, careful arrangements you leave behind. If you're lucky, your passing will be marked by warmth. Candles in the window, neighbours keeping vigil, children whispering prayers. If not, you take comfort in the fact that you did what you could, that you left as little chaos as possible for those who come after. Historians still debate whether these obsessions were unique to the old, or whether everyone in the Middle Ages lived so close to death that preparation was a lifelong task. You suspect the answer is both, but growing old sharpens the focus. You turn your attention to the last things: soul, memory, forgiveness, peace. So, as you set out your clothes for the morning, you touch your shroud for reassurance, smooth the wrinkles from your good scarf, and whisper a small joke to the crows outside. Not today, my friends, not today. You live, even as you prepare to die, and that in its own way is the oldest story in the world. You sit quietly in the corner, a witness to the life around you, present but, as the years pile up, more and more invisible. This is one of the most relentless cruelties of growing old in the Middle Ages. Not the pain or hunger, not even the slow, cold dread of death, but the feeling that the world no longer sees or hears you. With every year your voice grows softer. Your place in the household or the village edges further into the shadows, and your value is measured less by your wisdom or kindness, and more by what you cost. When you were younger, your voice carried weight. You led prayers at the table, decided when to plant and when to harvest, chose names for the children, settled family quarrels. In the old days, people listened when you spoke, even if just out of respect, sometimes out of fear, often out of simple necessity. But now you notice how conversations flow around you, like water around a stone. You're still here, but somehow no longer in the stream. Your stories, the ones you love to tell, the ones you know better than anyone, now meet glazed eyes or polite nods. The younger ones, restless with their chores and ambitions, rarely ask questions. You hear laughter at the far end of the table and realise no one is laughing with you, only near you. When your opinion is sought, it's often for ritual's sake, not because anyone intends to act on it. You become the voice from the past, a character in the background, the remember when that floats on the edge of the firelight. If you live with family, you try to remain useful. You sweep the hearth, mend torn sleeves, keep watch over the little ones. Some days, you're thanked. Other days, your efforts are ignored or quietly undone by a daughter or son who thinks they know better. You feel yourself shrinking inside your own home, your world reduced to the few tasks no one else wants, your circle of influence drawn ever tighter. Outside, among neighbours, it's little better. The market women, who once asked your advice on everything from baking to birthing, now cluster together without you, their voices low, their glances brief. The men at the tavern drink and debate, but leave you to your corner, assuming your mind is as faded as your hair. When you try to join in, you're greeted with awkward silence or gently shushed. Rest yourself, old one, they say, as if silence were a kindness. You become more careful, choosing your words and your moments. Sometimes you break through. A well-timed joke, a memory of an ancestor no one else recalls, a bit of hard-earned wisdom that solves a problem no one else could. For a moment the old magic returns and you're part of the story again, but the moment always passes, swept away by new concerns, new voices, new energy. Historians still argue about the status of elders in the Middle Ages. Some claim the old were honoured, even revered. Others say they were pitied, feared, or simply forgotten. The truth is that it depends on wealth, on family, on health, on the mood of the times. When famine hits, or war, or plague, old voices are the first to be silenced. The strong and the young take over, and the old are left with their memories and each other. Loneliness can gnaw at you in a crowd. You see faces, hear laughter, feel the warmth of bodies near you, but none of it truly reaches you. You retreat into yourself, taking comfort in small rituals, the sorting of beans, the mending of linen, the whispering of prayers for each name you remember. You try not to take it personally. It's the way of things, you tell yourself. But sometimes, in the dark, you wonder if anyone will notice when you're gone. Sometimes invisibility brings a strange freedom. You can watch without being watched, listen without being asked to join. Secrets flow past you, unguarded, as if you're part of the furniture. You learn things no one intends to reveal, and sometimes you smile to yourself, knowing that the old are never as harmless as they seem. Other times you long to be heard. You miss the days when your word could change the course of an argument, or your blessing could turn a wedding into a true celebration. You keep your stories alive by telling them to yourself, whispering them into the quiet spaces of the day. If you are lucky, a grandchild or neighbour will come and listen for a while, and you will see your life reflected in their eyes. A brief spark of meaning in the gloom. There are rare moments when you reclaim your place. A village crisis, a sickness, a hard winter. Suddenly your knowledge is needed again, and people seek you out, remembering your skill with remedies, or your knack for coaxing life from stubborn soil. But these moments are fleeting. As soon as the crisis passes, the old pattern resumes, and you fade once more into the background. You hear yourself described in the third person, as if you're not in the room. She used to be strong. He was clever once. You become a story told by others, your presence more myth than reality. Sometimes you're spoken of as if you're already gone. When she's gone, who will remember the old ways? The words sting, but you keep silent. What else can you do? Some find solace in faith. The church tells you that your suffering is not in vain, that your prayers matter, that old age is honoured by God. You cling to these words on the hard days, even as you sense the polite impatience of the young priest who barely knows your name. You light candles for your departed friends, whispering their names and hoping someone will do the same for you. Quirky remedies for invisibility exist too, rituals to draw attention, to keep your place in the world. Some old women wear bright scarves or keep noisy charms on their belts, rattling as they walk through the village. Some men tell outrageous stories, making themselves larger than life, impossible to ignore. You may try these tricks yourself, with varying degrees of success. Historians still debate whether these small rebellions brought respect or only more laughter. You notice, too, that children see you differently. To them you are mysterious, even magical, a keeper of secrets, a guardian of old stories. They slip into your lap, ask strange questions, and bring you wildflowers for no reason at all. Their attention is fleeting, but it warms you more than a dozen polite adult conversations. Yet, as the years pass, you become more comfortable with silence. You learn to cherish your own company, to make peace with your memories. You find meaning in the small tasks, in the slow rhythm of days, in the knowledge that you have outlasted so much. Sometimes late at night you wonder if anyone will remember you. Not just your name, but the sound of your laugh, the warmth of your hand, the stories only you could tell. You hope that you have left enough behind, in words, in actions, in love, to echo after you're gone. Historians still argue about whether invisibility is a curse or a mercy. You know only that it is real, a fact of life, as much a part of old age as aching joints or fading eyesight. But in your heart, you hold on to the moments when you were seen, when you mattered, when your voice shaped the world, and you remind yourself, quietly and stubbornly, that even in the silence your story is not over yet. Another day, another reminder that your body is the favoured playground of every pestilence and infection in the land. Old age in the Middle Ages is never just about grey hair or wrinkled skin. It's about living with the constant hovering threat of disease, knowing that each cough, each fever, each swollen joint could spell disaster. While the young might bounce back from a chill or a pox, you know in your bones that illness has a special appetite for the old. Every sunrise is a victory, every ache a warning bell. It starts with little things. A scratch on your leg refuses to heal. A tooth abscess grows, then spreads a fever through your body. A cough lingers through the winter and into spring. In a world with no antibiotics, no modern medicines, every cut, every shiver is something to be feared. Even the smallest injury can fester, and a cold, damp house becomes a breeding ground for misery. The village wise woman does what she can, poultices of herbs for wounds, bitter teas for coughs, prayers and charms for everything else. Sometimes the remedies help, sometimes they don't. You watch as neighbours, sometimes even children, wither and fade from ailments that barely trouble the young. You know the names of all the local fevers, the sweating sickness that comes out of nowhere, the ague that chills you to the bone, the summer flux that leaves the strong crawling to the privy. Each season brings its own terrors, and in old age they are all waiting for you. You know the dread that comes when plague whispers through the village. In your lifetime, you have seen it more than once. The red cross painted on a door, the hurried burials at dawn, the silence that follows in the streets. When plague comes, the old are often left to fend for themselves, their value as caretakers already diminished, their bodies already weakened. Some say it is a mercy, better to die quickly than to linger. Historians still debate whether communities did all they could for their elderly during epidemics, or whether fear and desperation ruled. You remember the coldness in the air, the feeling of being watched by death itself. But not every danger comes as a plague or fever. There are other, slower tortures, arthritis that swells your fingers and toes, making even simple chores agony, dropsy, where your legs balloon with fluid until you can hardly walk, the stone, when your bladder becomes a battlefield, blindness creeping in, one day at a time. The young are baffled, sometimes even impatient. It's just age, they say, as if the answer should be enough. But for you, every symptom is a fresh torment, another enemy in a world full of them. Then there are the infestations that never seem to leave. Lice and fleas make their homes in your bedding, biting you raw, hiding in the seams of your tunic and the corners of your mattress. You scratch and scratch, sometimes until you bleed. The wise woman offers vinegar washes and combs of bone or wood. You try them all, but the pests are relentless. Sometimes you joke that you'll never die alone. There's always a few thousand lice to keep you company. The laughter is bitter, but it's laughter all the same. Some ailments are shrouded in mystery. Your neighbour's joints swell and bend in unnatural ways. Another friend coughs blood for weeks, then slips away quietly in her sleep. You try not to think about your own future, but it's impossible to ignore. Old age is the mother of all sickness, someone says at the market, and no one disagrees. Superstition and faith mingle in your approach to illness. You whisper prayers to St. Roch or St. Sebastian, leave bread on the windowsill to keep out evil spirits, tie amulets around your wrist or neck. The priest offers holy water, the wise woman ties charms to your bedpost, and you try every remedy, earthly and divine. Whether these measures offer real protection, historians still argue, but in a world where understanding is so limited, hope is a kind of medicine. Quirky cures abound. People say that eating garlic keeps away the bad air, or that wearing a bag of dried lavender wards off fevers. Others swear by drinking beer instead of water, believing it cleaner and less likely to poison the blood. There are tales of miracle springs and healing stones, of old women cured by the touch of a passing saint. You try everything, sometimes more for the comfort of ritual than for any real belief in the cure. When you're bedridden with illness, you become both patient and prisoner. The household gathers, worried and watchful, but there's little they can do. A bit of broth, a cool cloth on your forehead, a whispered prayer at the door. Sometimes the pain fades, and you find yourself grateful for even a day of comfort. Other times the fever wins, and you drift in and out of restless dreams, unsure whether you'll ever wake with clarity again. You fear death, but you fear dependency more. You hate needing help with the privy, being spoon-fed broth, listening to the whispered worries that you're fading. You see yourself through their eyes, a reminder of what they all might become someday. You learn to accept help when you must, but you never stop wishing for your old strength. The greatest danger of disease is isolation. When you are sick, visitors keep their distance, sometimes out of fear, sometimes out of helplessness. You listen to the world through the walls, children laughing, the market bell ringing, the shuffle of feet on the road. You become a ghost in your own house, your only company the scrape of a chair or the distant voice of a priest. Some days you wonder why you keep fighting. The world is so hard, the suffering so constant. But then a grandchild brings you a flower, or the sun falls across your bed in a warm patch, and you remember. You endure because that is what you've always done, because hope is the last thing to leave you, even when your body is ready to give up. Historians still argue whether medieval medicine was all superstition, or whether in their own way people understood more than we think. You know that hope, faith, and persistence are as much a part of healing as any herb or prayer. Sometimes you recover, sometimes you do not, but you greet each new day with a stubbornness that surprises even you. You mark the passage of time by illness and recovery. This was the winter of the cough, that the summer of the fever, the year your joints swelled until you could barely move. The calendar of your life is a chronicle of pain and survival. You learn to celebrate the good days, to forgive your body for its weaknesses, to keep fighting even when everything aches. And if the end comes, you face it as you have faced everything, with courage, with a little humour, and with the hope that your suffering meant something to those who watched over you. If nothing else, you want to be remembered, not as a burden, but as a survivor of everything the world could throw at you. So you close your eyes at night, whisper a prayer for protection, and let the quiet come. Tomorrow will bring new aches, new worries, maybe even a bit of relief. But for now, you rest, a warrior in the battle against time, disease, and decay. The world grows quieter as the years wear on, each day stretching a little longer, each night sinking a little deeper into silence. You feel it in the soft shuffling of your feet, the creak of your chair, the hush that settles after the fire burns low. There are fewer voices in the house now, grown children who have moved away, neighbours who have passed or forgotten, friends who visit only in dreams. Growing old in the Middle Ages has left you tougher than you ever imagined, but also more alone. There's a melancholy in these final days, a gentle sorrow that sits beside you as you stare out the window, watching the light shift across the yard. The village seems to have moved on without you. At times, you're invisible in the bustle of market days, the laughter of feasts, the huddled rush for warmth in winter. Yet in the stillness of your room, you're more aware of yourself than ever. Your aches, your breath, your thoughts echoing in the quiet. You remember a time when your days were full, children's voices, a partner's hand in yours, neighbours laughing in the sun. Now, your companions are the small rituals of survival. Tending the fire, folding your blanket, reciting a prayer as the sun slips behind the hills. Your senses sharpen to the smallest details. The taste of broth, the flicker of a candle, the brush of cool air on your cheek. Each is a reminder that you are still here, that the world is still real, even as it pulls away from you. Dying in the Middle Ages is rarely the peaceful, communal passage so often imagined. More often, it is a solitary affair. If you are lucky, someone sits by your side, a daughter, a grandchild, a kindly neighbour, holding your hand or murmuring a prayer. But many slip away quietly, unnoticed, in the middle of the night or the hush of early morning. Some go suddenly, while others drift for days, fading slowly, their breath growing fainter with each hour. You have spent years preparing for this moment, consciously or not. You set aside a clean shroud, tucked coins for the priest's prayers, rehearsed your last confession in your mind. You have forgiven old quarrels, said what needed saying, at least as much as anyone ever can. But now, as you sense the end coming, all those preparations seem distant. What matters is not the words or rituals, but the memories that rise up. Faces you loved, kindnesses given and received, small moments of joy and sorrow that shape the whole of a life. The house around you carries the hush of expectation. Sometimes you feel a gentle touch, a cool hand brushing your forehead, a soft voice whispering comfort. Sometimes you wake to emptiness, only the wind at the window, and you wonder if you have already slipped away. The pain of the body ebbs and flows, some days sharp and insistent, other days distant, as if you are already halfway elsewhere. The senses fade in and out, vision clouding, hearing dimming, the world growing softer and less distinct. There are moments of fear too, a sudden panic as the breath shortens, as the heart stutters in your chest. You think of all you have lost, all you hoped for and never saw. The world outside is indifferent to your struggles, but you cling to life, fiercely, stubbornly. Even now you hope for one more dawn, one more chance to see the sun spill through the window, to feel the weight of the blankets, to taste bread, to hear a kind word. Yet there is acceptance as well. In the slow quiet of the night you make your peace with the end. You recall the old stories, the ones that promised rest after labour, reunion after loss, light after darkness. You whisper your prayers, sometimes to God, sometimes to loved ones already gone. You listen for the familiar footsteps of those who might come to sit with you, to remind you that, for a little while longer, you're not alone. Historians still argue about what the final moments of medieval life were truly like, whether the dying were surrounded by ritual and family, or mostly left to themselves in the busyness of survival. The stories are mixed. Some recall grand vigils, others tell of silent departures. What you know is that, in these last hours, the mind wanders where the body cannot follow. You drift through memories, through dreams, through prayers, until all that remains is breath, and then silence. There are practical things even now. The house must be kept tidy, your affairs in order, your wishes quietly spoken. You hope the priest will come in time to offer the last rites and comfort for the soul. You hope too that someone will remember you, not just in the prayers of the church, but in the stories told at the fireside, the small kindnesses carried forward in others' lives. Sometimes there is a final clarity, a sudden remembering of all that mattered, a last joke whispered to a friend, a last blessing murmured over a grandchild's hair. You leave behind a world not transformed but touched, however briefly, by your presence. This is your real legacy, as lasting as any monument or grave. As the end comes, you feel the weight of everything, the joys and burdens, the losses and little victories, the cold, the hunger, the laughter, the pain. You're tired, but not broken. You've endured what the world could offer, and though you go quietly, your life was anything but small. In the hush of the final hours, you find peace. Peace in the knowledge that you loved, that you endured, that you mattered. The candle guttering on the table, the warmth of a blanket, the hush of a whispered prayer. These are your companions in the last hours. You close your eyes, breathe out one more time, and let the world slip away. You trust that somewhere a story will be told, a memory cherished, a kindness given in your name. In the end, that is all any of us can hope for. The story settles now, the final echoes fading into quiet. Picture yourself lying back, letting your weight sink into the mattress, feeling every muscle loosen, every breath lengthen and soften. All around, the world hushes. Old wood creaks gently, wind brushes the window, and a slow, gentle warmth fills the room. You remember the faces of loved ones, laughter in the firelight, the comfort of shared meals, and the sweetness of old stories whispered in the dark. Whatever aches the day has brought, let them drift away, carried off by the hush of night and the soft golden peace that settles in your chest. There is nothing left you need to do. All your stories, your struggles, your small kindnesses, they rest safely now, tucked away where no cold or hunger can touch them. The world outside grows quiet, and your heart finds its gentle rhythm, steady and slow. Even if you have felt invisible, you have always mattered. Even if you have been forgotten, you have always left something of yourself behind. As your breath grows slower, let your thoughts quiet too. Each memory floats soft and light, each worry gently untangled and put to rest. The world becomes a safe, warm cocoon, a cradle, a shelter, a place of peace. Let yourself drift now, wrapped in the slow, timeless sleep of ages past. You are safe, you are home, you are at peace. Sweet dreams.